for a better understanding of the world around you, for a greater knowledge of the world you live in. Wolf and Dessauer in downtown Fort Wayne and downtown Huntington brings the Screen News Digest, a chapter of living history, into your classroom.
The general should be elected now. I would like the members to know that I am stepping aside because I hope this may help the United Nations to save the peace and to serve better the cause of freedom and progress for all mankind.
The General Assembly, acting upon the recommendation of the Security Council, selects a new Secretary General.
Mr. President, Vice President, distinguished delegates to the United Nations General Assembly's 7th session. I have the great honor to introduce to you Mr. Dag Hammarskjöld, your new Secretary General of the United Nations.
Dag Hammarskjöld makes this promise to the delegates.
I bring to this task a firm will to devote myself without any reserve to the work carried out by the United Nations organization in pursuit of its high aims. I am here to serve you all.
But then, as had happened to Trygve Lie, Dag Hammarskjöld comes into conflict with Russian interests and ambitions. And in 1960, Nikita Khrushchev denounces the Secretary General as a tool of the imperialists and demands his resignation. Dag Hammarskjöld's reply is simple, direct, and straight to the point.
The representative of the Soviet Union spoke of courage. It is very easy to resign. It is not so easy to stay on. It is very easy to bow to the wish of a big power. It is another matter to resist. By resigning, I would therefore, at the present difficult and dangerous juncture, throw the organization to the winds. I have no right to do so. I shall remain in my post during the term of my office as a servant of the organization in the interest of all those other nations as long as they wish me to do so.
This is Dag Hammarskjöld's finest hour. A year later, in 1961, rioting and unrest racked the Congo, and the newly independent African nation threatens to become a battleground between the free and communist worlds. And so Dag Hammarskjöld travels to the troubled land, seeking to end the tragic suffering and bloodshed. And it is here, shortly after these films are made, that Dag Hammarskjöld, at 56, is killed in an airplane crash. Little known before his election, he leaves a deep imprint on history. The native son who went forth to serve the world returns to be mourned and honored by Sweden. Then, from the church where he worshipped as a boy, there is a last sad journey. While officials from more than a score of nations look on, Dag Hammarskjöld takes a final salute from the organization that he served so long and so well. The United Nations is thrust into yet another crisis, faced with yet another challenge, as the Soviet Union raises again its proposal to replace the office of Secretary General with a three-man troika. In a dramatic appearance before the General Assembly, President John F. Kennedy defines America's position.
Mr. President, honored delegates, ladies and gentlemen, we meet here in an hour of grief and challenge. Dag Hammarskjöld is dead, but the United Nations lives. His tragedy is deep in our hearts, but the tasks for which he died are at the top of our agenda. However difficult it may be to fill Mr. Hammarskjöld's place, it can better be filled by one man rather than by three. Even the three horses of the Troika did not have three drivers, all going in different directions. They had only one, and so must the United Nations executive.
The Russian proposal for a troika is rejected. The United Nations will be without a Secretary General for 2 months as the Security Council seeks to find a successor to Dag Hammarskjöld. At last, a recommendation is made, and the members of the General Assembly vote on the name of U Thant of Burma. When the ballots are counted, the vote is unanimous. U Thant is chosen acting Secretary General of the United Nations, filling out the unexpired term of Dag Hammarskjöld.
I, U Thant, solemnly swear to exercise in all loyalty, discretion, and conscience the functions entrusted to me as Acting Secretary General of the United Nations, to discharge those functions and regulate my conduct with the interests of the United Nations only in view, and not to seek or accept instructions in regard to the performance of my duties from any government or other authority external to the organization. Thank you.
In a rare display of United Nations unanimity, U Thant is congratulated by the heads of all the member delegations. Beginning a new job with grave responsibilities, he shakes hands with Valerian Zorin, Russia's UN ambassador, and the late Adlai Stevenson of the United States. And then U Thant speaks for the first time as Secretary General.
Speaking for the first time in this hall, not in my familiar role as the delegate from Burma, but in the new role of Acting Secretary General of the United Nations, my first thought is to thank my fellow delegates for the honor they have done me and the confidence they have placed in me in electing me to this high office.
A year later, U Thant will be named to a full term as Secretary General of the United Nations. The Congo crisis also will cast its shadow across the labors of U Thant. UN peacekeeping units are sent into the country, creating a financial crisis for the World Organization. Several nations, including the Soviet Union, refuse to pay assessments to support the international force. Despite repeated trips to Moscow and lengthy talks with Andrei Gromyko and other Russian leaders, U Thant is unable to persuade the Soviet Union to change its militant position. In Paris, where Charles de Gaulle also refuses to support the peacekeeping operation, the Secretary General is rebuffed again. De Gaulle makes it clear that France will not pay its assessment. The dispute, still unresolved, paralyzes the United Nations General Assembly for an entire year in 1964. Equally as difficult a UN problem is the admission of Communist China to membership. U Thant has indicated a position favorable to the seating of Red China, a step opposed by the United States and many of her free world allies. Through the years since 1950, in debates and discussions, American delegates have made their country's position clear.
Mr. President, the United States will vote against the resolution to expel one of our members in order to make room for the regime in Taiping. No delegation in this debate has been able to refute what is in fact undeniable, that Communist China does not meet the requirements clearly set out in Article 4 of the Charter for participation in this organization. Both in words and in deeds, Communist China rejects the commitment required of member states to settle their disputes by peaceful means and to abandon the use or threat of force in international relations. Communist Chinese pronouncements and behavior in this respect have become both more explicit and more bellicose since the Assembly last discussed this question.
And through the years, at each session of the General Assembly, proposals to replace nationalist China with communist China have been defeated in procedural votes. A yes vote favors the admission of Red China. A no vote supports the American position.
Yes, France. Yes, Gabon. No, Gambia. No, Ghana. Yes, Greece. No, Guatemala. No, Guinea. Yes, Haiti. No, Honduras. No, Hungary. Yes, Iceland. Abstain. India. Yes. Iran. Abstain. Iraq. Yes. Ireland. No. Israel. No. Italy.
The vote by countries is flashed on a huge tally board.
Nigeria. Yes. Norway. Yes. Pakistan. Yes. Panama. No. Ukrainian SSR. Yes. The Soviet Union. Yes. United Arab Republic. Yes. United Kingdom. Yes. United Republic of Tanzania. Yes. United States. No.
When the results of the balloting are announced, Communist China has again failed to win acceptance and admission. But the controversy continues to divide the world organization and cloud its future.
La proposition n'est pas adoptée.
And so, as the General Assembly meets for its 21st session to elect a president and transact opening day business, the admission of Red China, a successor for Thant, the war in Vietnam, all cast a pall over the proceedings. But the cares and concerns are momentarily put aside as Abdul Rahman Pajwak of Afghanistan is chosen Assembly President. Widely respected and admired, the new president was instrumental in working out the compromise that ended the 1964 deadlock in the Assembly. At the crucial meeting, to the delegates and to the world, Ambassador Goldberg puts forth a new American proposal for ending the bombing of North Vietnam and bringing peace to Southeast Asia.
We are prepared to order a cessation of all bombing of North Vietnam. The moment we are assured, privately or otherwise, that this step will be answered promptly by a corresponding and appropriate de-escalation on the other side. We therefore urge before this august assembly that the government in Hanoi be asked the following question, to which we would be prepared to receive either a private or public response. Would it, in the interest of peace and in response to a prior cessation by the United States of the bombing in North Vietnam, take corresponding and timely steps to reduce or bring to an end
its own military activities against South Vietnam.
The initial response from Hanoi and other communist capitals is negative. The offer is rejected, and the United Nations remains at the crossroads in its pursuit of peace. To widen your horizons, to stimulate your interest in things going on about you, Wolf and Dessauer, one of America's great department stores, has presented the Screen News Digest as a public service.